You made a contribution. What reward do you want? Jenny asked. I want to gain access to the Void Dragon Bones, Han Zio said. Jenny nodded. Hayer is in charge of the warehouse. I'll let him know to give you a limited amount of Void Dragon material. Hayer managed logistics, so the movement of all rare materials required his approval. Han Zio's request was very normal, and Hayer naturally would not refuse. Han Zio was content. Void Dragon materials had a price but no supply. It could be regarded as a type of faction specialty. Whether he was going to sell the materials or keep them to build machinery, Void Dragon materials were of great use. After Han Zio left, Jenny leaned back in the chair, and her eyes behind the lenses were flashing. Black Star Han Zio, not the kind to succumb and tremble under aims, has many secrets, claims to be a foreseer, and all of his subordinates are immortal. With such power, if their number was higher. Alas, although such a person of great assistance, I don't know if it's a good thing. After a pause, Jenny stopped frowning. Never mind, it doesn't matter who he is, as long as Ames is still here, it's enough to suppress all accidental factors. Start the engine, let's go. Numerous drivers controlled the spaceship manually. The bottom of the spaceship spewed plumes, and just as it was the fixed rail of the dock, an announcement came to the spaceship's system. All captains, please note that we will encounter large meteoroids ahead. 3 minutes till contact. By then the shield will be fully activated. No spaceships will be allowed to enter or leave. The observed image from the radar appeared on the screen. A large, dense patch of white blocks were approaching at high speed, all meteoroids. This situation had made it too dangerous for an aircraft to move alone. Peggy hastily told the people to extinguish the engine and stayed, relying on the protection ability of the floating Dragon Island and make plans after this wave of meteoroids. The people in floating Dragon Island could originally see the universe through the artificial atmosphere. But once the shield was activated, the sky seemed to be concealed by a golden curtain. The whole of floating Dragon Island turned into a golden American football. The plasma energy core operated at its highest power output, and the golden shield's surface shot out high-energy light arcs from time to time. Coming to the dock of Peggy's spaceship, Han Zio turned on the communicator and searched for nearby channels. He found Peggy's and sent a communication request. Not long after, the communication was accepted. Peggy's face appeared on the screen, and he said, "What do you want? I have something to ask you about the Silvers." Peggy's heart tightened. He had already decided not to intervene in the event of the Silvers, so he did not expect that he would still be implicated. He calmed down and asked, "Who are you?" "Dark Star." Han Zio kept his voice low and used the name of Dark Star. Peggy's expression suddenly became strange. His first reaction was to not believe him. This sudden stranger was not a hybrid Godorin, and he felt just like the silver thrown out of the spaceship, just using Dark Star as an excuse. After all, Dark Star was very famous in the Shattered Star Ring. Many people like to use it to intimidate others. "Do you have proof?" Peggy doubted. Han Zio acted tough and said coldly, "I'm the one asking now. The 2 silvers that you threw out of the spaceship had something that we want. As for my identity, I do not need to prove to you. As long as you try to refuse me, you will know that the person who killed you is from Dark Star. Of course, if you cooperate, I can pay some money for this information." Because the intel was limited, there were only the 4 points that he had speculated earlier, which was why Han Zio said this. Fortunately, it had hit the right spot. The carrier had exposed the fact that he was a Dark Star's carrier to stay alive, and only a few people knew this, including Peggy. Peggy did not believe it initially, but when he heard Han Zio's words, he immediately thought of the bead. Most of it made sense, and he was suddenly stunned. SHT, was that silver really a Dark Star emissary? Did they really come to find him? Most of his doubts were gone. Now, Peggy was apprehensive and excited. After hesitating for a while, Peggy felt that he would rather believe than not. He explained earnestly, "There was a silver who claimed to be the emissary of Dark Star. I found a black bead on him. I don't know what it was, but I thought it was valuable, so I kept it with me. But a few days ago during the scrimmage at the dock, the bead was lost. It might have been picked up by someone. Since the bead was no longer in his possession, telling the truth would cost him nothing. The other party was likely Dark Star, not to mention his idol. Just based on Dark Star's style of doing things, if he refused to disclose information, the end could be imagined." Han Zio narrowed his eyes. "Bead? What is that? I've never heard of this event before in my previous life. Could it be a hidden storyline?" "You are very cooperative. I will pay a reward for the information." "I don't need to be paid." Peggy rubbed his hands and said, "I just want to be able to join the Dark Star." Then it occurred to Han Zio suddenly. No wonder Peggy did not bargain before revealing the information. He turned out to be a hidden supporter of the Dark Star. At first, when Hanzio saw Peggy's information as a hybrid Godorin, he had already guessed as much. The reason that he had chosen to act as Dark Star was not only just to cause trouble, he also wanted to try his luck. As it turned out, he had hit the target. With a cough, Hanzio said seriously, "I've seen your convictions. You're a Godorin with resolve. Our great cause is in need of hot-blooded men like you." Before Peggy was happy about it, Hanzio's words took a turn. "However, we have strict screening procedures for new people. To prevent spies from getting in, there is one thing that needs your help. There's another force on this floating island. Before me, did anyone ask the same questions? Us? No. Great, we're one step ahead. This is your chance to do something for the organization. Just like me, they might very likely find you in a while, asking the same questions. And you should tell them that the bead has been thrown into space." Hanzio held back his laughter and said, "After you complete this, Dark Star will accept you at the right time, taking you to the secret base for formal training." "Got it." Peggy was convinced, his face solemn. He did not think that the Silvers would be involved in so much and could not help but be curious about what secret that bead had, attracting these large organizations to secretly compete for it. Hanzio turned away from the pier and changed to his original clothes when there was no one around. "So, what Dark Star wants is a black bead, but its whereabouts are unknown." Although he did get something, the intel was still not enough. If he used normal methods, the trail would end here. However, Hanzio did not use normal methods. "Since the goal is known, I can try to use Destiny's Child's card. Hopefully it will give me some valuable information." Since he at least needed to know what the target was, Hanzio decided to use the Foreseeing card. Although the intel from Peggy was very little, it happened to just meet the requirements. You used usages 3 divided by 5. The familiar hazy fog appeared, like a dream scene. Hanzio's line of sight passed through the fog, and the black bead appeared in front of his eyes, caught by a palm. Looking up along the arm, a handsome face fixed in the eyes of Hanzio. After a full 2 seconds, the image shattered. Hanzio was back to the original environment, as if he had experienced an illusion. YG. Hanzio's eyes opened wide. He really did not think that a bead would have been picked up by the players and picked up by this naughty kid at that. No wonder it had not been given to him. Just 20 minutes after Hanzio left, Ember rushed to the pier and looked for Peggy. Peggy remembered Hanzio's advice, and his expression slightly changed. These Dark Star competitors did indeed come very quickly. "Who are you? What do you want?" "I am a mercenary. My employer is one of the Silvers. The prisoners have been rescued, so you are no longer our enemy. Now I want to ask you something. Did you kill 2 Silvers? We want to know the details. I can pay a certain intel fee for it." Ember chose to impersonate a mercenary. Only mercenaries knew about the 2 dead Silvers, so the motive of asking about it was reasonable. Otherwise, it would have caused a lot of suspicion, and they might have gotten reported as the people who attacked the slave market. In his mind, he had not been exposed, so no one would know their Dark Star identity. "Are you a mercenary?" Hatred appeared in Peggy's eyes. It was the mercenaries who had made him make such a huge loss, yet they wanted intel. "If not for that Dark Star agent's advice, I wouldn't even talk to you." "As long as you are willing to answer," Ember said, "I can pay 50,000 to make up for your loss." This is a large sum of money. His eyes turned around, pretending to be moved by the money, and started talking about the process of capturing the Silvers, only hiding the secret message bead. As expected, Ember listened to the very end and found the information that they wanted was missing. He had no choice but to make his goal clear. "Did you get a black bead from these 2 people?" "What bead?" "Never seen before. I threw them out of the ship and was too lazy to waste time frisking." "The thing you're talking about is probably drifting in the universe." Peggy sneered in his heart and lied, following Hanzio's advice. A flash of disappointment flickered in Ember's eyes. This was the worst result. If the carrier's corpse had accidentally been caught by a star's gravity, the secret message bead would have turned to dust as well. If absorbed by a black hole, it would also not ever be found. "By the way, has anyone ever asked you the same question?" Ember suddenly asked. "No." Peggy denied it immediately. Ember frowned and transferred the rest of the reward to Peggy before leaving with a heavy heart. Now, the trail had been broken. Their task force had no use, so they could only report it to the headquarters. In the spaceship, Peggy looked at the black communication screen before smiling, full of anticipation. Joining Dark Star had always been his goal, but because Dark Star was too mysterious, he had not had an opportunity to contact them. It had always been a great regret for him. And now, the opportunity that he had been dreaming of had fallen from the sky. I have made a contribution for Dark Star. After waiting for so long, I've finally caught the opportunity. I finally can join Dark Star. Near the ruins of the slave market, the players did not have to return to the guards. They were temporarily settling the Volga brothers and Arashia down. They surrounded Arashia like butterflies. Arashia's beauty was over the top, so it was very pleasant to the eyes. Furthermore, she was a beauty suffering from amnesia. With Bun Hit Dog as the representative, the hormones of most of the males were flooding, and they chatted with Arashia excitedly. Arashia was very calm. She did not have any interest in the surroundings, so she was only replying from time to time. On the side, the god players of the various clubs kept their distance, maintained their reserve, and chatted with each other. At this moment, all the Black Star Mercenary Group players triggered a new mission simultaneously. Mission Introduction. Some time ago, Black Star lost a black bead. Anyone who finds it and gives it to him will get his reward. Mission Requirements. Turn in the black bead. Reward: 180,000 experience, plus 200 Black Star Mercenary Group favorability, Sunal Officer Class Armor X1. Remarks: this mission is a competitive mission. Only one person can receive the reward. All the game players were in an uproar, surprised. How was the mission triggered? Bunhit Dog was at a loss. Should be a sudden mission. But why did Hanzio only just realize that he lost something important? Maple Moon grabbed her chin and murmured with a thoughtful expression. However, the concern of the other players was different from her. They did not ask why, they just cared about the reward. Only Lai Ji's expression was different from everyone else's. His eyes were filled with sparks and explicit surprise. Black bead, isn't that the one I have? So, Hanzio is the special character triggered by the bead. That makes sense. The bead was in his hands, so did that not mean that he had already met the mission requirement? Black Star, this seems to be what you have lost, Lai Ji said. Hanzio's eyes sparked. He took the beads and said cheerfully, "How did you know this is my precious? I lost it a few days ago, didn't expect you to pick it up. You're really lucky. You've helped me a great deal." Competitive missions were different to other missions. In addition to the actual reward, as long as Lai Ji felt he had an advantage over others, he would give up the bead willingly. This was a characteristic Hanzio found from Lai Ji's past actions, so he had tailored this mission for Lai Ji, making him feel advantaged. Hence, Lai Ji obediently handed over the bead. Hanzio sized up the bead. It was dark and smooth, giving off magical glow from time to time. He quickly filtered his memories in his mind. Something from the magic side, some kind of energy gem. Enchanting ball. Unlikely, Dark Star took it so seriously. This bead should be more precious, maybe a secret message bead. A secret message bead was a high-grade magic safe, only unlockable with a special verbal password. Its confidentiality principle was the precise magic seal formed by magic patterns similar to a maze. Only the password could trigger the eye. It was very complicated. Of course, since there was a lock, there was a corresponding method of breaking that lock. With the use of large magic deconstruction instrument to analyze the magic lock, or having high-level mages unlock it artificially, the secret message bead would thus be pried open. What's important is not the bead, but the things inside. Originally, he had thought that the bead would trigger a hidden mission, but it seemed like the secret message bead was just a prerequisite. A few days later, Peggy's spaceship had long been away from floating Dragon Island. It was slowly sailing in an unpopulated star zone. There were no fixed stars there, only dead gray planets filled with dead silence. Suddenly, folds appeared in the dark space ahead, and a huge object hundreds of times larger than Peggy's spaceship came out of the stealth mode, stopping in front of Peggy's spaceship. The size comparison was like a bean and a watermelon. This object was tall and ferocious, completely black apart from some subtle golden patterns. It did not have a streamlined shape but consisted of two isosceles trapezoids fused together from their bases like a prism. This was not a normal spaceship. It was Dark Star's medium mothership, similar to a mobile base, containing a large number of combat ships. One mothership signified a fleet. Dark Star had no fixed bases. All of their bases were motherships, perennially in stealth and mobile states, moving everywhere. That was why the organization was mysterious and difficult to contact. No one could grasp Dark Star's position. Peggy was overjoyed when he saw this. Dark Star did not break their word. "They've come to take me in." At this moment, Peggy thought that the Dark Star mothership had specifically come just to take him in. For him, the Dark Star had made such a large display. He felt the attention from Dark Star and was moved to tears. The spaceship approached the connecting channel, and the mothership captain waited at the channel entrance with other troops. Just as they were about to tear open the door of the spacecraft with their power, Peggy opened the door and walked out. Seeing everyone was a hybrid Goteran, Peggy was filled with excitement. He had finally found the organization. With an excited tone, Peggy said, "I've been waiting for you for a very long time." Dark Star warriors initially had cold expressions, but now they could not help but looked at each other in bewilderment. It was the first time that they had seen a target who not only did not resist but also took the initiative to cooperate, looking like he had just returned home. Did this guy not fear death? Bold. The captain nodded in approval before waving. Seize them. Dark Star warriors swarmed in. Peggy was pressed on the ground, all the while thinking that this was Dark Star's welcome ceremony. He confidently shouted, "Rest assured, don't have to doubt my loyalty, I absolutely will not resist." "Boss, I think they are for real," one of his men said with a sad face. Peggy glared and yelled, "Shut up. What do you know? This is a method to test our loyalty." The Dark Star warriors cuffing Peggy heard this and sighed. "If everyone could be as cooperative as you, it would save us a lot of trouble." The scavengers were taken to prison and tied to a black metal execution column. The captain walked up to them and said coldly, "I need you to answer my questions honestly. Among the silvers you captured, one of them was carrying what we want, a black bead. Where did that bead go?" Although Ember had already gotten the answer, the style of the Dark Star was never to just trust easily. Letting go of the rest easily was not a terrorist organization's code of conduct. Peggy was stunned. "Didn't you already ask me?" "Indeed, I want you to tell us again." The captain subconsciously replied. Suddenly, he paused, and his expression changed. "Wait a minute." He thought that Peggy was referring to Ember, but with some thought, it did not make sense. Ember had pretended to be a mercenary, so how did Peggy recognize that Ember was a Dark Star member? Ember, who was listening from the side, opened his eyes wide in disbelief. The interrogator. Claimed to be a Dark Star agent, cough cough cough. Ember frowned. "Captain Sarota, let go. You're strangling him. Let him finish the whole story." Captain Sarota backed off, and Peggy coughed loudly, as if he was going to cough out his lungs. Eventually, Peggy realized that something was wrong, and with a hoarse voice, he said while shivering, "A mysterious hooded man who claimed to be a Dark Star emissary found me. His target was that black bead as well, so I told him of its whereabouts. I have always admired you, so when he promised to let me join Dark Star as long as I lied to the next group of people that came to ask about the bead, I agreed readily." The situation suddenly complicated. There seemed to be another mysterious force that had their eyes on the secret message bead, and they had even used Dark Star's name to trick people. They must be tired of living. They were directly provoking Dark Star. Once they found the culprits, they would make them beg for death. What about me? Peggy did not have the same confidence that he had moments ago. He was panicking, but he felt that he had given them the intel and helped Dark Star to find out more about the hidden enemy, which should have been considered a contribution. Sarota glanced at him, then gestured. The surrounding Dark Star warriors all raised their light energy rifles and aiming at the column. All the scavengers were frightened. They struggled and hastily begged for mercy. "Don't kill me. It's just a misunderstanding. I didn't mean to deceive you. Dark Star is my idol. I have always wanted to fight for the cause of the hybrids. Please let me join you." Peggy was trembling as he exclaimed, "You really want to dedicate yourself to Dark Star?" Sarota's eyes flashed. "Yes, Dark Star is my faith. I would do anything for you." Peggy hurriedly revealed his heart and expressed his loyalty. "Well, for us, you being dead is more useful than being alive." "Dark Star appreciates your contribution," Sarota sneered. The murder was the biggest purpose of the Dark Star for this trip. The fewer outsiders in the world that knew about the whereabouts of the secret message bead, the better. Bright lights burst from the energy rifles, melting wounds in the scavengers one after another. The laser expanded in Peggy's eyes, and his line of sight became all white. He opened his eyes wide and roared, "No." The dense wounds were all over his body. Peggy's head fell limply to the side with his eyes wide open. He had died with so many regrets. He had thought that his dreams of joining the Dark Star was going to come true, but never had he expected that he would eventually die at the hands of Dark Star. 10 Refined Void Dragon Pith. These cute little things are yours. The effect of the Void Dragon Pith was a permanent increase in attributes with no side effects. It was extremely precious to the players. Hanzio picked up a tube of Dragon Pith and observed it carefully. After 3 consecutive injections, he received a total increase of 8 strength, 11 endurance, and 2 charisma. If the dosage reached a certain level, the quantity accumulation would trigger a quality change, receiving the talent called. Its effect on the surface included ordinary effects of increased speed and dodge rate, but the real benefit was that it would affect the choices during his race evolution. Hayer was surprised. You are injecting too much. Are you not afraid of genetic mutation? Enough is enough. Han Zhao shook his head, indicating that he could do it. It was genetic mutation that he wanted. At his 7th injection, Han Zhao's body turned stiff. A cold and hot mixed feeling exploded in his body, and his legs became unsteady. He staggered, and his back hit the shelf as he wheezed heavily. His frown was so wrinkled that it could almost squeeze a fly. He clenched his teeth very strongly. All the nerve endings in his body were transmitting a sharp pain to his brain, and every vessel was beating and bulging. If there was a super who was good at sensing present, they would discover that Han Zhao's life rhythm was changing. Not only had it started surging and become stronger, there was also a mysterious trace of the void. You have gained the talent. Your senses can detect the changes in space, giving you a stronger reaction speed and more flexibility. Plus 28% movement speed. Plus 15% dodge rate. Black Star, Lord Ames wants to see you. A new panel of virtual holographic image popped out from the communicator, and Ames' delicate face appeared. She was floating in the vacuum space directly with her body, surrounded by force field protection. She seemed to be fighting a strong enemy. However, the lights were all deflected by the invisible force field barrier, falling like bombs onto the unpopulated planet under her feet. Apparently, the battle had lasted quite some time. 1/10 of the planet had disintegrated, like an apple that had been bitten once. Ames spoke, but no sound was heard. She realized something, then controlled the force field and grabbed a large pile of gas from the planet, shrouded herself in an artificial atmosphere, and only then was there sound. I've listened to Jenny's report. Your team has excellent combat capability, and it's a waste for you to stay on Floating Dragon Island. Anyway, you were mercenaries originally, so I approve of your activities to be outside. Furthermore, I have a suitable mission for you. You've met my teacher, so help me find information on him, Ames said. He had made a request to Jenny a few days ago, with the excuse that there was enough manpower on Floating Dragon Island, and him staying here was a waste. He thus applied for the field activities. The result was finalized, and Han Zhao hung up the communication, feeling very good. The superiors of the 3 armies would soon arrive, and then he could follow them back to complete the mission. Things are going so well. Han Zhao had a happy face. Was he finally getting lucky after all the unlucky events that he had been through? Arashia was waiting at the door until Han Zhao waved his hand and took her away from the warehouse. He was worried about leaving Arashia to run around alone, so he always brought her along whenever he was free. He entered a deserted street, and after walking for a while, the relaxed expression on Han Zhao's face suddenly vanished. Han Zhao frowned, feeling that the atmosphere was strange. He took a step and shielded Arashia behind her back, then looked around vigilantly. Good senses. The voice of a person seemed to come out of nowhere, with a cold tone of judgment, containing the confidence of his own superior strength. Han Zhao felt the voice was familiar. At the same time, hard walls suddenly extended from the ground around them, covered the sky, and trapped the two of them like a cage. The soldiers of the Dark Star Task Force appeared and surrounded the two people. Ember stood at the forefront. He stared at Han Zhao with an expressionless face, as if everything was under his control. Black Star Mercenary Group Captain, we need your help. Come with us. Not resisting will save you some pain. Han Zhao's eyes became extremely serious. Han Zhao tried to use the communication channel, only to hear the sound of electric currents. Don't waste your time. Strong signal disruption devices have been planted nearby, so no messages can be sent out. You can't call for help, Ember said indifferently. It seems that you think you've got me in the palm of your hands. Han Zhao kept calm and said, since I have no way to escape, tell me what is it that you want me to do, and maybe we can agree to some terms. I don't want to fight a meaningless battle. We want you to ask the mercenaries about the whereabouts of a black bead, Ember said. Hearing this, Han Zhao analyzed quickly in his mind without changing his expression. It seemed that Dark Star was able to pry out the truth from the mouth of Peggy. They most likely also knew that there is an imposter using their name who is also competing for the secret message bead. But they don't know that the imposter is me. I've been attacked this time not because I'm exposed but because I happen to be one of the targets. Han Zhao squinted and behaved like he did not seem to know what the bead was. This is just a small matter. I can help, so there's no need to use force. Ember took out a small transparent box containing a large number of nanotechnology insects the size of sand that were used to control the brain and heart. They would be able to take one's life anytime once injected into the body. After you inject this, then we can talk about our cooperation. Looks like I don't have a choice. Han Zhao shook his head. The mechanical suit covered his body in an instant. Injecting the nanotechnology insects meant that his life would be in someone else's hands, and he would never agree to that. A waste of time. Ember controlled the dust and turned it into a shield, blocking the bullets. His face was calm. To him, no matter what the enemy's fighting method was, as long as their grade was lower than his, it would all be meaningless. He could defeat them in a blink of an eye unless they were immune to his power. Ember activated his power and extended his senses. His vision changed, and Ember could see Han Zio's body's atomic structure clearly. The Esper power that had worked countless times did not work this time. Ember could not control any carbon atoms in his body, its structure was unshakable. The calmness on the face of the Ember was suddenly broken and replaced by dismay. "It's you." Ember stared suspiciously at Han Zio. It turned out that the witness on that night who caused the mission to fail was this mercenary group captain, Black Star. "Our last battle was too short to determine a winner. This time, I'm not in a rush." The witness was the reason that the attack had been exposed, and his real identity was their target this time, Black Star. With both old and new grudges, Ember was full of fighting spirit. He decided to go all out this time. 3 pugilists covered in flames surrounded Han Zio in a triangle shape. Banged. With a swing of the scythe, they clashed. The aftershock echoed in the prison cell. Arashia was forced to the edge and could only watch. Ember was very curious about Han Zio's ability to resist his powers. Anyway, the signal disruption device was already set up, and Black Star could not call for backup, so there was plenty of time to find out. As Han Zio was attacked and having a tough fight, all the players far away on the other side of the floating island who were doing their duty in aircrafts triggered a new mission. Mission introduction: your captain has been ambushed and is engaged in a tough fight. As a member of the mercenary group, you are his backup. Mission requirements: arrive at the scene quickly and provide backup for Black Star. The coordinates are: reward depends on the speed and number of the backup. Rejection consequence: -300 Black Star mercenary group favorability. All the players became spirited. There was one more mechanic who was good at electromagnetic disruption and smart hacking, connecting to Amphipter through his own combat suit and disrupting Amphipter's system through the hacking program that he wrote. He was even trying to take control of Amphipter. Han Zio's smart technology was still within the bounds of basic knowledge, so he had no choice but to turn off most auto functions and leave only the nerve's connection controls on, to stop detection and analysis as well as to prevent Amphipter's system from being taken over. This mechanic was also controlling numerous shield generators to block attacks for his teammates. The last one was an electric mage. His cooperation with Ember was the closest, unleashing his electric sorcery by using the carbon dust as a bridge. Ember turned them into graphene, which was more conductive, to increase the power, attacking Han Zio from all directions and burning the internals of Amphipter. Attacks rained down on Amphipter, and the number of wounds gradually increased. Facing 7 enemies of the same grade and one whose grade was even higher than his own, Han Zio was like facing a terrifying tsunami. He could hardly fight back. The mechanical suit's durability dropped very quickly. After only a few minutes into the fight, it was already at 16%, close to being completely destroyed. Ember yelled as he clenched his fist. Before Han Zio could land the attack, Ember could give the wounded Amphipter one last attack to destroy it. Countless spikes formed inside Amphipter within a second. The mechanical suit became covered in holes and was on the brink of shattering. At this moment, a blurry white light bloomed. Amphipter, which was about to shatter, came back together like a miracle, and its energy level recovered to its prime. Machinery continuation. What? Ember was shocked and surprised. The attack that he had been so confident in could not break Han Zio's suit, and it was now too late to stop him. The Acid Esper initially believed that Ember could stop Han Zio, but now he was horrified and could only watch the scythe growing in his vision. Flaming will. Swoosh. With a flash of light, blood spilled all over. A ferocious wound extended from the Acid Esper's head to his chin, splitting his face in half. His health dropped a large chunk in an instant. The Acid Esper fell to the ground and writhed in agony as blood gushed out from his face. Ember hastily moved him away before Han Zio could land another hit. The next moment, Amphipter crumbled into pieces. Machinery continuation made Amphipter last for 5 seconds longer, and in this time, Han Zio landed this hit and heavily injured one of the enemies even while he was under siege. Han Zio was breathing heavily. He had wanted to get rid of that guy a long time ago. It was so disgusting to have him keep spitting acid at him. Black Star had reached his limit after lasting for so long. From the moment his mechanical suit shattered, he was a sheep waiting to be butchered and would not have any chance to fight back anymore. A mechanic that lost his machines was at most half as strong. This is it for you. I've said before, you can save yourself a lot of pain if you don't resist, and I am a man of my word. Suddenly, with a stomp that cracked the ground, Han Zio dashed toward the Dark Star mechanic like a flash of lightning. He was not deflecting the attacks anymore, and he let the countless sharp cones hit his body. With a flick of the wrist, the blade of the scythe split open and turned into around 8 pieces of electromagnetic blades covered in electrical sparks, spinning and forming a drill shape. "Take my electric dragon drill," Han Zio yelled. The drill penetrated the shield that the Dark Star mechanic urgently generated and sent him flying. "You maniac, you're looking for death." The face of the other Dark Star warriors changed in an instant. They were shocked that despite facing such concentrated attacks from Ember, Han Zio still dared to give up on his defenses and chose to attack instead. Although Han Zio was able to succeed due to them having their guard down, this attack did not cause much of a problem. They were all supers of the same grade, so they would not be killed this easily. On the other hand, this act caused Han Zio to get hit by a lot more attacks. "Looks like you're not going to compromise. Quite the spirit you have," Ember complimented sincerely, then shook his head expressionlessly. "But resistance is futile, and it shows you have nothing up your sleeves anymore." Arashia, who was standing at the side, could only see the lightning, bombs, spears, and energy enter the thick dust countless times, but she could not see Han Zio. Endless explosions and clanking sounds filled her ears, but there was no growl or scream of agony. Other than the sound of the battle, she could not hear Han Zio making any sound at all. Seeing this, Arashia suddenly had the urge to stop everything. An unknown impulse drove her to take action. However, at this time, Ember suddenly raised his hand, and they stopped attacking. "That's enough, he should be heavily injured by now. Cuff him and let's get out of here immediately." Bang! Before Ember finished his sentence, the sound of the ground cracking came out of the dust. Han Zio shot out like a cannon, covered in wounds and dragging a tail of dust behind him. Even after taking so many attacks, his wounds were all light wounds, and none of them penetrated deeply. With energy flickering around his body, his scythe slashed down in a flash. "How can you be okay?" They were shocked. After receiving so much damage, even if he was a pugilist of the same level instead of a mechanic, he would have been heavily injured. Yet, Han Zio was still so alive. "How are you more tanky than a pugilist?" Hehe. Han Zio looked up. Half of his face was covered with blood, but his face was full of mockery. He laughed with a husky voice and said, "Is this all you have? Are you scratching an itch for me?" Ember's face was filled with rage. The Dark Star warriors took a deep breath and raised their focus level once again. Attacks submerged Han Zio for the second time. Seeing this, ripples formed in Arashia's eyes. She took a few steps forward, picked up an electromagnetic handgun that Han Zio had dropped earlier, raised her hands, and fired at Ember. The needle bullets were deflected by Ember's diamond skin. Ember turned around and snorted. With a casual swing of his hand, he controlled the carbon element in Arashia's body and slapped her into the floor, immobilizing her. When the ambush was launched, Ember had already felt Arashia's presence. She was just an ordinary person. So, Ember did not care about her and left her on the side. Now that she had fired at him, Ember was not bothered at all. He kept her under control casually and continued to focus on dealing with Han Zio. Boom! The wall above their heads suddenly burst into pieces as a searchlight pierced in. Numerous aircrafts hovered above in the sky, aiming their laser cannons at Dark Star's people. "Drop your weapons and surrender immediately," Hurlus yelled through the speaker. The faces of the Dark Star warriors changed. "SHT, the guards are here." The ambush only lasted a few minutes, and we just checked there were no patrols nearby. Did a team of guards just happen to pass by? Lucky him. Less than 10 minutes had passed since the start of the ambush to the end of the battle. It isn't luck. The people on the aircraft are all Black Star's subordinates. He must have called for backup. How did he get through the signal disruption? Someone exclaimed with disbelief. Ember stared at Han Zio and said in a deep voice, "I admit I underestimated you this time. Black Star, I'll remember your name. Retreat." This moment, Ember took out a metal rod. He held onto both ends and twisted, activating the device. A blue dot of light appeared in the middle, its light covering 3 meters. The Dark Star warriors quickly walked into the area covered in blue light. Then, Ember twisted the metal rod once again right after. The blue dot contracted and turned into a string of flashes. The people and the dust inside the area disappeared without a trace. When the dust dispersed, Han Zio wiped off the dust on his face and walked over to the place where Ember and the others disappeared from. He squatted down and swept away the dust on the floor, uncovering a circle mark on the ground. Directional short-distance teleporter leaves almost no trace behind. "We can't chase them," Han Zio shook his head, a little helpless. Compared to the others, Dark Star's technology was rather ahead of its time, at least very ahead of him at this moment. The aircraft circled around and did not find anything. They landed, and Han Zio gave them the mission completion reward. He turned and walked to Arashia, then helped her up. Arashia shook her head, signaling that she was not hurt. Han Zio contemplated and said, "There's a very high energy reaction inside your body, but you don't know how to use it." He had seen Arashia firing earlier and saw that Ember kept her under control in an instant. She was of no help at all. If Arashia could fight when they were ambushed, he would not have ended up fighting alone. Han Zio was not an irresponsible person. It was impossible for him to abandon her once the mission was complete. Since he had taken Arashia away, she had to join the mercenary group. He did not need someone who was a burden, and Arashia had a lot of potential. She was worth cultivating. If she became a super, at least she would not be a burden, and she might even be helpful. You definitely have the talent to become a super. I can teach you to realize your potential and become a super so that your talent will not be wasted, Han Zio said. You want me to learn the super knowledges? Han Zio shrugged his shoulders and said, I don't know who you were before, but since you lost your memories, you need to learn again. Maybe you were a very strong super before. You might improve at an unbelievable speed. There's one thing I never said, Arashia said slowly. I apparently am some sort of space wonder. You can't bring me away. Han Zio was stunned in place. They said that I won't really die. I will revive after I die and go back to the initial amnesia state, losing the memory of everything before I died. I remember I have been alive for 3 years this time, and I was sold 5 times. Each time, after 6 days, I return to that cell. No matter how far I am, it will only be an instant. No one can bring me away. Horlade had not been completely honest back then. Han Zio did not know about Arashia's secret. Now he realized that Horlade had been promoting her because he knew that she would be back in the end, and he was using that as a scam. The truth might be in the memories that she had lost. What Han Zio cared most about at this moment was that Arashia could not be taken away. Is there no way to solve it? I don't know. Arashia shook her head and said, only 3 more hours to the 6th day. The mission requirement was to save her from the slave market and stay with her for 6 days. Only now did Han Zio know the difficulty of it. However, since it was a mission, there must be a way to complete it. There should be clues in that cell. Han Zio ordered the rest of the people to patrol around and look for the enemy. Although he did not have any hope of actually finding anything, he summoned the backup amphipter and wore it, then accompanied Arashia to the slave market. Ruins? She suddenly asked, why do you want to bring me away? Han Zio paused for a moment. He definitely could not say that it was a mission requirement, so he said, I'm very curious about you. Curious? Arashia mumbled. What is that? Curiosity is the desire for knowledge. For example, when a normal person loses their memory, they want to know who they were before. This is a type of desire. Desire? I don't seem to have this sort of thing. Arashia tilted her head, pondered, and said, is the reason for you teaching me how to use the energy inside my body also your own desire? I want you to be stronger and become a help to me, Han Zio said honestly. He had figured out a few ways to communicate with Arashia. There was no need to pretend, he just had to be straightforward and express his motive. As always, Arashia still had a carefree attitude. I won't die, so what's the point of becoming stronger? Strong or weak, it's all meaningless. Or I should say, existence itself is meaningless. Han Zio thought about it and said, but if you die, your memory will be reset. You'll forget about this short-term memory. You after reviving might not be who you are now. Once you revive, you'll start from the beginning again, thinking the same things you have been thinking, wasting the same time you have already wasted, only to end up in the same place you are now. Becoming stronger will help you to avoid reviving, preventing yourself to be killed by others or disasters. Han Zio paused and said, and about meaning. You don't need food and excretion to maintain your life, so you can't feel existence. If your mind is blank, a day or even a year will feel like an instant. Hence, why not find something to do and give meaning to your life? I see. Arashia mumbled a while, nodded, and said, thank you, talking with you is very pleasant. No one had ever said this much to me. In the past 3 years, the others only had 2 impressions of her, a space wonder or a slave that did not run away. Never was there someone that communicated with her like she was a normal individual. Don't mention it, it's just chit-chat. There was no clue in the prison cell. Han Zio could only stop and casually chat with Arashia, waiting for the time limit to arrive and see what would actually happen. Seconds and minutes passed. As the last minute ended, the change happened. Arashia was still standing outside the door. She did not return to the cell. She took a few steps backward, then looked down on her body. Nothing unusual happened. Completed. You have received 1,800,000 experience. Han Zio was so surprised her eyebrows almost raised uncontrollably. He hardly did anything at all, yet a space wonder that even the floating dragon could not resolve was gone just like that. There was definitely more to it. You have triggered Great a hidden chain mission. Mission introduction. Arashia is a unique life form. An enormous secret lies within her. Bring her alongside you, and one day, this secret will find you. Reminder, this is a chain mission. The next mission will only be unlocked once the previous one is completed. First round, teach Arashia. Help her to awaken her power, control the energy inside her body, and reach grade B. Reward, 5,200,000 experience, 1x random reward, plus 5 Rista favorability. Failure condition, Arashia dead. Chain mission type grade a hidden mission. Han Zio was shocked. This was usually something that only happened in large main storyline events. He had no information about this storyline in his previous life, which meant that no one had triggered it. This was an unknown event. He was more assured that Arashia was not ordinary. The mission name was, what did that mean? Also, who is this person called Rista? Apparently, I'm able to leave. Arashia was confused. What did you do to me? I have no idea. Han Zio said. Anyways, this is a good thing. 2 days later, the superiors of the 3 large mercenary group arrived late at Floating Dragon. Jenny had a meeting with them. After she accepted their apologies, she finally released Goa, Porter, and Serlini's teams who had been locked up for many days. Right after these people got out, they surrounded Han Zio and expressed their gratitude and praise. The superiors of the 3 armies came to contact Han Zio with very friendly attitudes. The 3 of them had come to send him off, which meant that they gave him a lot of face. Even the superiors of the 3 armies were only able to see Jenny. Her Excellency Dragon Emperor has allowed you to be a field team. You're now a field commander. Your power is Floating Dragon's external military power, so we hope you can grow stronger quickly, Jenny said in a very formal tone. This gift is for you. Han Zio's eyes sparkled as he opened to look at it. Inside was a mini portable nuclear reactor. Stable nuclear reactors were something that could only be built with advanced energy knowledge. Energy knowledge was more difficult to obtain than compression technology, so he could not build it currently. Now that he had the reactor, he could add materials and use it to generate power, then use it at the power core of a mechanical suit. The output of the mechanical suit would reach new heights. Thank you. Han Zio nodded with joy on his face. After Hayer walked away, Wilcinder came closer and said, Hayer is a little ugly. I felt he was hard to look at initially but got used to it after some time. His personality is quite good. Han Zio glanced at him and said, Ames probably feel this way about you. Wilcinder's expression collapsed immediately. Don't change the topic. Did you bring a gift? No. Bye. Han Zio turned around and entered the ship. Come on, why is the treatment difference this huge? Wilcinder said resentfully on the dock. The ship took off. Floating Dragon Island gradually became smaller in his eyes. He left with 4 more people than he entered with, 3 Volga brothers sleeping on the side and Arashia, who was gazing out of the porthole. What are you going to Golden Palace for? To find someone. He was not planning to return to Jubilee Hub for the time being. The secret message bead was a hot potato, and he wanted to identify it first. Fortunately, it just so happened that he knew that a top-notch Godarin mage was secluded in Golden Palace, who was good at analyzing magic patterns and charged a fee to identify unknown magic items for customers. That person was like a functional item identifying NPC in the eyes of the players. Let us send you there then, Goa said. If it was someone else, Sky Ring would have sent them to a public planet at most and not sent them straight to the destination like Han Zio. The Silvers had taken off earlier than them, so they were already in space and were very far away. They could barely be seen. At this moment, an enormous and thick laser beam suddenly penetrated the Silver spaceship. The next moment, the Silver spaceship turned into a firework in space. Everyone saw the explosion, but no sound reached them through the vacuum. The Silvers who were just inviting them to their home not long ago were now all turned into ash, dying silently. There was no sound in outer space. Death seemed like a small matter. It was deadly silent outside, but it was loud inside the spaceship. What's going on? Who attacked the Silvers? The Sky Ring mercenaries were stunned. This time, space ripples appeared. A large and black Dark Star mothership deactivated its stealth mode. Many small battleships detached from the mothership and approached quickly like black locusts. Their targets were the 3 mercenary spaceships. All the people who might have seen the secret message bead were captured, and Dark Star had yet to find the bead. The mercenaries were the last target, the possibility of it being with them was the highest. However, Dark Star did not know whose hands it was in, so they decided to target all the mercenaries. After Ember's failure, Dark Star ordered Seroda's fleet to come to the planet where the Silver Employer was and capture all the mercenaries ruthlessly. Inside the secret message bead was something that Dark Star had spent 100 million Inas to buy, a key item for them to deal with Godera's plans. There was no way they were going to give it up. Hanzayo was frowning. Dark Star's persistence and decisiveness were beyond his expectations. They were not going to give up on even the slightest possibility, which proved what he thought earlier. The more value the secret message bead had, the higher the risk was. What a coincidence, the secret message bead is really in my hands. They don't even know it. This was not even a battle, it was like a hunter chasing after prey. The small spaceships of the mercenaries were absolutely no match for the Dark Star fleet. The only good news was that Dark Star did not fire immediately. It seemed like they wanted to capture them alive. This made the mercenaries feel a little more at ease, with there at least being a chance to negotiate. This is the most dangerous situation I have ever met. Hanzayo felt his heart was beating very fast. Not only was he not panicking, but he was excited. Chance of getting out unharmed is less than 10%. Now, this is interesting. He licked his lips, and excitement flashed in his eyes. Those that were faced with imminent death either became terrified of death or fearless. He happened to be the latter. After experiencing countless dangers and even dying once, he had surpassed fear long ago. During the process of the spaceship diving down, the pilot sent out a distress signal to the area channel. An invisible wave spread out in space. The area channel was like the public channel for players. All the spaceships passing by the area were able to receive it. This is Fawn Galaxy, the territory of Holy Stone Civilization and Black Raven Civilization. Friction occurs very often due to territory boundaries. These two large civilizations always have people stationed nearby, and they have set up very strong signal receivers that are sensitive to all sorts of waves. Even if someone receives our signal, the problem is, who dares to come? Dark Star is the one attacking us after all. Holy Stone and Black Raven might come to just watch and guard against Dark Star in case they have other motives, or they might not be willing to waste their military power to help us, a group of irrelevant mercenaries. Unlike Godera, who have so much hatred toward Dark Star, Holy Stone and Black Raven might not want to mess with Dark Star. The three of them looked at their superiors, and the superiors nodded firmly. We have already contacted the commander. He will come to save us. He's sending emergency dispatch orders to the nearby teams. We fear Dark Star, but we definitely will not let them do whatever they want, and we will certainly not give up on our own people. The commander is currently assembling a fleet and sending out messages to all partners. We have to protect ourselves. Stall for time. There will definitely be someone here to save us. Dark Star was known to be fearsome. But Sky Ring, Blades, and Purple Gold were not some organizations that they could easily mess with. Other than their own forces, they also had a very complicated network in the mercenary industry. They had many partners, and they were all very strong individuals or organizations. It was not simply three large armies that Dark Star messed with. It was half of the entire mercenary industry throughout the three nearest star clusters. In other words, Dark Star was used to being unbridled. But this time, they stabbed the hornet's nest. However, a distant water source could not put out a nearby fire immediately. Hanzayo took out the unidirectional communicator that Jenny had given him. He calmed his mind and sent the request. The mercenaries called for backup, and he also requested help from his chief boss. He was not putting all his hope on the three armies. Didn't expect to use it this soon. Ding. Ames appeared on the screen. Ames was sitting in front of a small hovering table, and on it were all sorts of unique and rare foods. The four beyond grade of beings in the Shattered Star Ring knew each other. Fighting was just a kill time, and once they were tired from fighting, they would sit down to rest and have a meal together in a very peaceful manner. Ames' eyebrow raised a little. "It's you, my new subordinate. Did you forget my name?" Ames swiped the communicator like she was looking for something. 1 second later, she said with a very natural tone, "Black Star, what is the reason for you contacting me? Have you found the whereabouts of my teacher?" She emphasized Hanzayo's name like she was trying to say that she did not forget. Hanzayo shook his head and said, "The aircraft I'm currently in is attacked by Dark Star. The situation is dire, so I'm here to ask you for help." "Why did Dark Star attack you?" Ames asked curiously. Hanzayo coughed. "A few days ago, Dark Star caused trouble on Floating Dragon while you were not there. It seems like they were up to something. Coincidentally, I happened to disrupt their plan. This attack should be an act of revenge." Ames tilted her head. She recalled Jenny's report. Now that Dark Star was mentioned, she seemed to have some kind of beef with Dark Star, and she had even been planning to find trouble with them earlier. "Alright, wait there, I'll go when I'm free," Ames said with a casual tone, then hung up the communication. Hanzio was speechless. Ames' attitude was carefree, so he had no way to force her to come immediately. He was not strong enough, so he could only seek help from someone stronger. "You have triggered an urgent mission. Mission introduction, start running. Mission requirement, escape Dark Star's pursuit and stall till backup arrives. Reward, basic reward 800,000 experience. The final reward depends on mission rating. The basic reward is given when achieving the lowest rating, D. After lasting for 2 days, the mission rating will reach D. The rating will increase by 1 level every 12 hours thereafter. Failure condition, captured by Dark Star. Hanzio analyzed the information that he read between the lines of the mission. The lowest rating requires me to last for 2 days. This should mean the earliest backup will only arrive after 2 days, which means that we need to fight alone for 2 days. He was instantly troubled. They might not even last 2 hours, let alone 2 days. Warning, 67% energy left in shield. Energy level entered the yellow warning zone. Please refill in time. Energy core close to overload. Please cool down in time. A string of warnings was announced, like a hammer hitting their hearts. The pilot's face was pale. Suddenly, they saw Hanzio walk out of the crowd. He walked to the pilot's side, pressed on his shoulder, and said in a confident tone, "Stand up, give me the seat." The face of all the mercenaries in the spaceship changed. "Changing pilot during the fight, are you sure?" Goa stared at Hanzio and said, "This concerns the life or death of everyone here. Do you know what you're doing?" Hanzio nodded and said, "If he continues piloting, the chance of crashing is 99%. If I do, it's only 30%. Phew." The pilot was outraged. Goa stared at Hanzio for a full 2 seconds, then nodded and said, "Okay, you do it." They suddenly heard an announcement from the system. "Adjustment complete. Shield output decreased to 20%. Have you lost your mind?" The pilot yelled uncontrollably. Everyone was shocked. Hanzio weakened the shield as soon as he took over. The spaceship's defensive capability was largely decreased. If they got hit by attacks like earlier, the body of the spaceship would be damaged. Was that reminder all for nothing? Goa was filled with regret. Just as he was about to yell, another announcement sounded from the system. All energy is being directed into the engine. Complete. On a desolate, unpopulated planet, a chase was underway on its gray plains. Almost 100 hovering ships were chasing after the Sky Ring spaceship. The Sky Ring spaceship's exhaust flames expanded violently in an instant. The sudden increase of speed was like a tornado that stirred up countless dust from the floor. Dashing at a low altitude, the head of the boat was covered in dust, like a high-speed triangular speedboat dashing across the ocean. Boom. The hovering ships hastily increased their speed as well, but they could barely keep up with the Sky Ring spaceship. Although it felt more dangerous, the number of times that the spaceship got hit decreased drastically. Fantastic. Goa's tone changed instantly. A glimpse of a smile appeared on her expressionless face. At this pace, the damage dealt by the hovering ships will be minimal. You did very well. What? Hanzio was confused. This is just basic controlling. I have not done anything yet. The higher the speed, the better his controls. He was far from his limit at the current speed. Sadly, if he increases the speed further, the shield would be too thin. Hanzio stretched his wrist and said, "Hold on tight." With the lesson of falling right on the floor earlier, no one ignored his reminder this time. Hanzio could still divert his attention and said, "Come and control the weapon. If we keep running and don't fire back at all, it will be the end of us sooner or later. Fire when you see a chance." The pilot hastily followed the order and sat in the weapon operating seat. Compared to Black Star, his piloting skills became completely ordinary. He made a sharp turn and escaped to the side. Its movement was as smooth as silk. On the other hand, the chasing fleet took a few seconds to adjust before catching up. Although no battleship crashed, Hanzio largely increased the distance between them. Not bad. Hanzio smiled and gave the pilot a thumbs up. The pilot smiled brightly back at him, as vomit flew down right between his teeth. The difficulty of these few movements was very high. Yet, no one in the ship showed any sign of being shocked. They did not even have the strength to be surprised. Their legs were shaking, and their heads were spinning. These movements had successfully given all of his teammates a debuff. Goa opened her mouth, forcing herself to try to give a few words of compliment, but instead covered her mouth in an instant. The muscles in her neck could be seen clearly to have moved up and down. Only then did she dare put her hand down. This piloting skill is absolutely horrifying. I have seen Fast and Furious, this is fast and dizzy. The players still had the strength to discuss what was happening. In the command hall of the Dark Star mothership, the image feedback from the hovering ships was shown on the screen. The captain, Sarota, was watching it with hands behind his back. 10 minutes passed after the battle started. The spaceships of Blades and Purple Gold were clearly struggling. Only Hanzio was doing slightly better. This attracted Sarota's attention right away. He pointed at the screen and asked, which mercenary group does this spaceship belong to? The Sky Ring Army. Sarota nodded and said, they have quite a good pilot. Looks like we need to spend more time. By the way, that Black Star is apparently on the Sky Ring ship as well, isn't he? At this time, the alarm suddenly sounded. Captain, space ripple detected. There are fleets jumping toward this direction. Sarota was not surprised at all. He brought up the detection image, showing that a large battleship fleet was jumping toward this direction from far away at both sides of the mothership. Both of them were in a guard formation. Dark Star was in the middle. The two fleets were the Border Guards Army of Holy Stone Civilization and Black Raven Civilization. They did not act immediately once they saw Dark Star. Instead, they stayed still and watched from afar. Is there a need to do anything? An assistant asked. Send out a message. Tell them we are just passing by to settle our business, and we will be leaving very soon. They will not attack us, Sarota said calmly. He was not concerned at all, like everything was under his control. In the Holy Stone Border Guards Army, command ship of the 3rd Formation, Streamlight. The atmosphere was filled with nervousness. Dark Star's fearsome name was well known, and they had quite the tension with Black Raven. All units on level 1 alert. Hold the position. At this time, Streamlight received a message from the Dark Star mothership. Sarota expressed their motive, emphasizing the fact that they meant no offense to Holy Stone and Black Raven. They were just carrying out a pursuit, of which the targets were some mercenaries. Once the mission was completed, they would leave immediately. Shivate's titan face relaxed a little, and without thinking, he said, tell them that it's possible for Holy Stone to not interfere with Dark Star's operation. But during this period, no suspicious action will be allowed. We will be monitoring from here, and we hope they leave as soon as possible. Shivate did not want a war to break out. There were many reasons. The first would of course be, they did not want to mess with Dark Star. The entire Shattered Star Ring knew the ugly history between Dark Star and Godera. No one wanted to be part of it. The most horrifying characteristic of Dark Star was that they were very stealthy. If they lost the battle, they would still be able to run away, and the revenge afterward would make you suffer a large loss. Secondly, if they fire, it might very likely cause Black Raven to misunderstand, which would then turn into a scrimmage, leading to a territory conflict. If he was determined guilty of deliberately starting a war in the court-martial, the punishment for that was very heavy. At this time, all 3 ships received the same message. This is Holy Stone Border Guards Army 3rd Formation. We have received your rescue signal and have arrived near the planet. Please gather at the coordinates we gave you. We will be there to receive you and provide protection. Together with this message were the coordinates, which were not far from where they were. This message was like cardiotonic, instantly giving everyone energy. Holy Stone is willing to help. We're saved. All the mercenaries in the 3 ships were overjoyed. Hanzio frowned and pondered, then said something that immediately cooled everyone down. I think this is quite strange. If the Holy Stone Border Guards Army wants to receive us, they would definitely be in conflict with Dark Star. But take a look up there. The Dark Star mothership is still floating there and not sending out any other ships. Furthermore, this is a very sensitive border area, so it's impossible for Holy Stone and Black Raven to take very long to come. This means that they've made a certain deal with Dark Star. This is the edge of their border, so the official authority here is blurry to begin with. They did not provide any help even when the Silvers were kidnapped. Now they suddenly want to help us. It doesn't feel trustworthy. Many people started to rethink, but they still hoped that they had gotten lucky. This time, there was a disagreement. Sir Lenny said in a low voice, I choose to believe this message. What about you? I'm not going. Hanzio shook his head without hesitation and then looked over to Goa. Goa hesitated for a while, then nodded and agreed with Hanzio's decision. Although there were some mercenaries in the ship that had other thoughts, seeing that Goa and Hanzio had both decided, they could only hold their thoughts in. Porter hesitated for a moment, then rejected it as well, choosing to listen to Hanzio's advice. Sir Lenny frowned and said, best of luck to you guys then. The purple gold spaceship deviated from the route and headed toward the pickup location, disappearing from sight shortly. We have to go underground. The scanner has already recorded all the terrain we have passed by, and there's quite a number of canyons and gaps in the terrain. The space below the ground on this planet is very huge. Very soon, a very long gap in Earth appeared on the horizon, like the gray-colored Earth opening its mouth, black as an abyss. From far away, it looked like just a small gap, and only when they got closer did they realize that it was tens of meters wide. The Skyring spaceship dived straight into the gap, and darkness filled their vision. The detector sketched out the terrain in the darkness. About 200 to 300 meters down, numerous caves appeared on both sides. Han Zio chose a cave and flew in. Inside was an underground space, leading to somewhere far away. The purple gold spaceship was still on the surface, and it arrived at the pickup location. Serlini sent a communication request to the channel that they had received the message from. Holy Stone 3rd Formation, please come in. I have arrived at the pickup location. Where are the receiving units? He repeated that again and again, but Holy Stone did not reply and kept silent. His expression gradually changed, and he started to sweat all over. The purple gold spaceship did not dare stop. It circled around the pickup location like a headless fly. When the Dark Star reinforcements came from all directions, Serlini's face turned pale. Only then did he realize that there was no one there to pick them up. Black Star was right. He had lost the gamble. Bullets rained down. Not long after, the purple gold spaceship crashed onto the ground covered in smoke. The gate opened, and the mercenaries inside sprinted out in all directions. However, the Dark Star warriors landed from the fighter ships hovering in the sky and surrounded them. There was nowhere to run. The struggle of Serlini and the others did not make any impact, so they were captured easily and escorted onto the spaceship to be sent to the mothership. Everyone in the 2 ships that were descending underground saw what happened to Purple Gold. Seeing that their friends that had once fought alongside them were in such a dire situation, everyone was grieving. If not for Han Zio standing his ground, they would have ended up the same way. The mercenaries looked at Han Zio with even more trust in their eyes. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.